The chapel is full. Hannah Reed looked through the open doorway. 3 complete rows of polished oak pews stood empty. "So are those seats," she said. Duke Edmund Valecrest followed her gaze without embarrassment. "They are reserved. For whom? Families of appropriate standing. Families who have not confirmed they are coming. They may still arrive." Hannah turned towards the courtyard, where gardeners, kitchen maids, stable hands, and elderly former servants waited beneath a light autumn rain. "They are already here." Edmund's expression hardened. "The royal Thanksgiving service cannot resemble a market square. They have not come to trade. Their numbers, clothing, and manner would make the service disorderly." "Then organize the seating," Hannah said. "Do not exclude the congregation." Several members of the planning committee looked down at their papers. Duchess Isobel Valecrest sat opposite her husband, one hand resting upon the list of workers barred from the ceremony. More than 300 names filled the pages. Edmund closed the chapel program. "A bell ringer is not a theologian, Mrs. Reed." Hannah met his gaze. "Nor is a duke a bishop." No one spoke. Edmund had expected obedience from a woman whose family had cleaned the chapel, tended its graves, and pulled its bell rope for 3 generations. Instead, she had reminded him before clergy, donors, and royal officials that patronage was not ownership. His voice became colder. "You confuse long service with authority, and you confuse patronage with ownership. Your family maintains the chapel. Then stop using it as though your family owns prayer." The meeting ended soon afterwards. By the following morning, Hannah had lost her position, her keys, and the cottage attached to the bell tower. St. Anselm's Chapel had stood on Valecrest land since 1684. It was older than the present manor house and smaller than the stone church in the nearest town. Yet generations of workers had treated it as the spiritual center of the estate. Children were baptized there. Servants married there. Miners prayed there before entering dangerous shafts. Families gathered there when storms destroyed roofs or disease crossed the valley. The Valecrest family had provided the land. But the chapel had been built from more than ducal generosity. Local quarrymen supplied stone. Estate carpenters donated timber. Farm laborers worked without pay on winter afternoons. Widows contributed pennies. The diocese provided the altar silver and ordained the building for public worship. Its founding covenant stated that no person who lived, labored, or sought refuge upon Valecrest land could be denied entry during appointed hours of worship. Edmund knew the document existed. He considered it a historical curiosity. Hannah considered it a promise. Edmund had not always treated religion as a ceremony arranged around his title. As a young man, he had used estate funds to repair parish roofs and purchased medicine during a fever outbreak. He had dismissed a corrupt steward who diverted money intended for widows. When a harsh winter left miners' families without fuel, Edmund sold part of his hunting ground to finance coal deliveries. People admired him because he acted. Over time, admiration became something he expected. Charitable reports placed his name above every program. Thanksgiving sermons praised Valecrest generosity. Donations from workers appeared beneath the larger sums given by noble families when they appeared at all. Edmund began to believe that because he financed service, he embodied it. He no longer saw charity as a responsibility. He saw it as evidence of his fitness to lead. The royal household was considering him for the position of Lord High Almoner. The appointment would place him near the center of national religious charity and ceremonial giving. The Thanksgiving service at St. Anselm's was intended to demonstrate that he could unite piety, order, and aristocratic leadership. Nothing in Edmund's design had room for muddy boots. The chapel restoration had cost a fortune. Its cracked windows had been replaced with coloured glass depicting saints, kings, and former Dukes of Valecrest. The roof was rebuilt. The old uneven benches were replaced with carved oak pews. A new organ stood above the western gallery. The family entrance was widened and covered by a stone portico. At Edmund's insistence, the Valecrest crest was placed above the sanctuary. Isobel objected. The altar already has a cross. The crest acknowledges the family responsible for restoring the building. Many families contributed. They contributed modestly. A widow gave 6 weeks of saved food money. That does not equal the cost of a roof. No, Isobel said. It may have cost her more. Edmund did not remove the crest, nor did he include the widow's name on the donor plaque. Isobel had organized much of the community fundraising. She knew who had donated coins, cloth, labor, and food for the workers. The laundry women stitched altar coverings. Gardeners carved temporary railings. Stable hands transported stone. Kitchen staff prepared meals during the restoration. Children from the estate school collected candle ends to be remolded. Edmund treated those contributions as participation. He did not treat the contributors as people entitled to attend the service their work had helped create. They were paid for their labor, he said when Isobel raised the issue. Some gave their wages back to the fund. They were encouraged by your committee. They gave freely. Then they should value the result without demanding recognition. Isobel looked at him across the breakfast table. You accept their sacrifice more easily than their presence. The order separating worshippers arrived 1 week before the royal visit. All estate workers would attend a servant service at 5 in the morning. The royal Thanksgiving would begin at 11. During the later ceremony, workers were required to remain at their posts. Cooks would prepare the banquet. Stable hands would attend the carriages. Gardeners would maintain the approach. Maids would serve in the house. Those not working were to stay beyond the chapel gates. Edmund described the arrangement as considerate. No one is denied worship, he said. They have their own service. At an hour when most of them are preparing yours, Isobel replied. The household must function. Then your separate service exists mainly on paper. A great estate requires order. An empty pew is not order when a living person is locked outside. Edmund's patience thinned. Worship may unite every class without erasing distinction. A locked door does not preserve distinction, Isobel said. It declares exclusion. Hannah refused to remove the estate choir from the program. It included footmen, gardeners, 2 miners' daughters, and an elderly housemaid with a clear alto voice. Edmund replaced them with singers from the cathedral. Hannah objected at the final planning meeting. These people have sung here every Sunday for years. This is not an ordinary Sunday. The hymns are the same. The occasion is not. They contributed to the restoration. They are not trained for a royal service. The bishop approved them. Last Easter, Edmund leaned back. This service will represent Valecrest before the Queen, Hannah replied. Then let it represent the people who live here. That was the moment he decided she would no longer ring the chapel bell. Her dismissal was swift. The estate steward collected her keys. Her son lost his position in the kitchen garden. Her cottage had to be vacated within 14 days. Her name was removed from the restoration book. The side entrance used by workers was sealed with a chain. Notices appeared stating that access during the royal service would be limited to authorized guests. Isobel found Hannah packing hymnals into a wooden box. "You will not leave the estate," Isobel said. "I have been given notice. I will provide a house until the diocese reviews the decision." Hannah shook her head. "This should not become private charity. What do you need?" "The covenant honored." Hannah held up her own lawful copy. "The chapel belongs to its purpose, not to the person with the largest donation." She sent a petition to Bishop Ambrose Hale. The bishop's reply was formal. He required Edmund to restore Hannah pending review, reopen the community entrance, and admit the established congregation. Edmund rejected the instruction. He wrote that St. Anselm's was an estate chapel under Valecrest patronage, and that security for a royal visit required temporary limitations. Bishop Ambrose sent no second letter. Instead, he announced that he would personally preside over the Thanksgiving service. Edmund interpreted the decision as surrender. "If he intended to oppose me," he told Isobel, "he would not attend. Perhaps he intends to oppose you in person." Edmund dismissed the suggestion. He was accustomed to men objecting privately and complying publicly. He assumed a bishop would behave like everyone else. The workers' service began at 5 in the morning. Only 37 people attended. Edmund received the figure before breakfast. "You see," he told Isobel, "there is little demand. The kitchen staff had been working since 3. The household must prepare. The stable hands were harnessing your guests' horses. Their duties are unavoidable. The laundry women were arranging your table linen." Edmund folded the report. "They were offered a service. You scheduled their worship at the only hour you knew they could not attend." He stood. "I will not debate every operational necessity as though it were persecution." "No," Isobel said. "You prefer to call it order." Rain began shortly before the Queen's arrival. Workers gathered outside the chapel in their cleanest clothes. Old men who had worked the estate for 40 years stood beside young maids. Widows held prayer books wrapped in cloth. Miners removed their caps. Several gardeners still carried mud on their boots, despite washing them twice. Guards blocked the gate. Through the stained glass windows, empty rows of pews remained visible. Edmund stood beneath the family portico in a black ceremonial coat embroidered with silver. The place beside him had been reserved for Isobel. She arrived in a deep blue gown and ducal tiara. For a moment, Edmund believed she had reconsidered. Then she walked past the steps and joined Hannah in the rain. He descended quickly. "The Queen's carriage is approaching." "I know. You must enter. They must enter. This is not the moment. You chose the moment when you locked the gate. You are humiliating me." Isobel looked towards the workers. "No. I am refusing to hide whom you humiliated first." The royal carriage stopped before the chapel. The Queen stepped down beneath an umbrella and immediately noticed the division. The Duke stood at the entrance. His Duchess stood outside the gate with hundreds of estate workers. "Why is Lady Valecrest in the rain?" the Queen asked. Edmund bowed. "A disagreement concerning seating, Your Majesty. It concerns admission," Isobel said. The Queen turned towards Hannah. "Were these people invited?" Hannah produced the printed program. "It says the entire estate was invited. His Grace later excluded everyone employed by it. Separate arrangements were provided," Edmund said. A kitchen maid spoke from the crowd. "At 5 in the morning, while we prepared his banquet." The guards shifted uneasily. Edmund's face tightened. Before he could answer, another carriage entered the courtyard. Bishop Ambrose Hale stepped down carrying a leather document case. He did not approach the family entrance. He joined the workers at the locked gate. "Open the chapel," the bishop said. Edmund kept his voice controlled. "The building has been arranged under my household's authority. Your family holds patronage." Ambrose removed the original founding covenant from its case. "It does not hold ownership of worship." He read the relevant passage aloud. "No door shall be closed against any soul who lives, labors, or seeks shelter upon Valecrest land during the appointed hours of worship." The Queen looked towards Edmund. "Did you read this covenant?" "Yes." "Did you order these people excluded?" Edmund hesitated only briefly. "Yes." "Did you dismiss the elected chapel clerk after she cited it?" "Yes." The bishop extended his hand. "Give me the key to the main door." Edmund did not move. "This chapel stands upon Valecrest land, and under diocesan consecration. My family restored it." Hannah lifted the community contribution ledger. So did everyone standing in the rain. Isobel placed the list of unused noble seats beside the list of excluded workers. The Queen compared them. "Open the door," she said. Edmund's jaw tightened. "Security requires entrance according to rank." Bishop Ambrose removed his ceremonial stole. "No service will begin inside a chapel whose patron bars its congregation." He turned to the diocesan officer. "Lock the family entrance." Edmund stared at him. "You cannot lock me outside my own chapel." "It ceased to be yours," the bishop replied. "The moment you treated prayer as a privilege you could withdraw." He gave the community key to Hannah. "Mrs. Reed remains chapel clerk until lawful review decides otherwise." Hannah walked to the chained side gate. The seal bearing the Valecrest crest was cut away. The chain fell. The Queen stepped towards the newly opened entrance. Her attendants moved to guide her to the royal door. She refused. "I will enter with the congregation." Isobel joined her. Hannah went first, ringing the handbell used before ordinary Sunday worship. Workers entered behind them. Cooks, gardeners, miners, maids, coachmen, widows, retired servants. The empty pews began to fill. The noble guests waited behind them. Edmund approached the family portico. The diocesan officer blocked his path. "You may enter through the common door after those you excluded." Edmund looked at the line. He would have to stand behind people whose names he had removed from the donor plaque, behind workers whose clothing he considered unsuitable, behind Hannah, whom he had dismissed as a mere bell ringer. For one long moment, he refused to move. Bishop Ambrose looked back from the community entrance. "Your Grace, humility is not a side entrance." The family door closed. Inside the chapel, the bell began to ring beneath Hannah's hand. A royal minister quietly closed the document, appointing Edmund Lord High Almoner. "The nomination is suspended pending inquiry." The service began with workers seated in the rows Edmund had reserved for absent nobles. No one had forbidden the Duke to pray. No one had denied him entry. He was simply required to enter through the same door as everyone else. Edmund Valecrest remained outside in the rain, staring at the chapel he had restored to prove his devotion. For years he had believed rank brought him closer to the altar. Now the doors stood open to the entire estate, and closed only against the man who still believed faith should wait for his permission. The service ended without Edmund. He remained beneath the family portico while hymns rose through the chapel walls. Rain gathered along the shoulders of his ceremonial coat. Through the stained glass windows, He could see labourers occupying the pews he had reserved for titled guests who never arrived. No one had expelled him from worship. The common entrance remained open. He simply could not bring himself to join the line after the people he had placed beneath him. When the final bell rang, the congregation emerged through the community door. The Queen walked beside Hannah Reed. Duchess Isobel followed with several widows from the estate. Miners, cooks, and gardeners passed Edmund without lowering their eyes. Bishop Ambrose stopped before him. You were free to enter at any time. Through the servants' door, the congregation's door. My family entrance was locked, because you used it to separate yourself from the people whose chapel you claim to represent. Edmund looked towards the Valecrest crest above the portico. I restored this building. You restored its stone. The bishop glanced at the open community gate. They restored its purpose. The diocesan inquiry began 2 days later. Edmund's authority over St. Anselm's was suspended. The chapel keys remained with Hannah, and an interim council assumed control of services, donations, and access. The commission examined the founding covenant, the royal program, seating plans, community contribution records, Hannah's dismissal, the closure of the workers' entrance, the 5 o'clock service, correspondence between Edmund and the bishop, the vacant pews reserved for absent nobles, the use of Isobel's name in charitable material. Reverend Charles Morton testified first. He entered the hearing visibly ashamed. Did you believe excluding estate workers violated the chapel's purpose? The commissioner asked. Charles looked towards Edmund. Yes. Did you tell his grace? Not clearly. Why? My salary, house, and mother's medical expenses were paid through the estate. Did the Duke threaten to remove them? No. Then why remain silent? Charles took a breath. Because I feared what he could do without needing to threaten me. The answer settled heavily over the room. Edmund had always argued that no one had been forced to support him. The inquiry revealed how unnecessary explicit force became when one man controlled employment, housing, charity, and worship. Hannah testified with the founding covenant before her. Did you oppose reserved seating for the Queen? The commissioner asked. No. For the bishop? No. For elderly or disabled guests? No. What did you oppose? Excluding an entire class of worshippers so the chapel would look more respectable. Did the building lack space? No. More than 100 seats remained available. Why were they kept empty? Because His Grace preferred the possibility of an important guest to the presence of an ordinary parishioner. The commissioner examined the community ledger. Were all contributors listed on the donor plaque? No. Who was included? The Valecrest family, titled patrons and large donors, and the labourers, recorded collectively as estate assistants. Hannah opened a second book. They were not collective when the money was collected. Each donation had a name. She read several aloud. A laundry maid who gave 2 days' wages, a gardener who supplied timber, a retired footman who donated the final coins from his pension, a widow who paid for 1 coloured pane in memory of her husband. Edmund had accepted each sacrifice individually. He erased them collectively. Isobel gave evidence after Hannah. The commission presented charitable brochures bearing her portrait beside Edmund's. Did you approve this publication? I approved the description of the Widow Fund. Did you approve the statement that the Thanksgiving service welcomed the entire Valecrest community? No. Why was your name included? Because people trusted my work. And did your husband request your presence in the family pew? Yes. Why? To make the exclusion appear compassionate. Edmund shifted in his seat. Isobel did not look at him. The commissioner asked, "Did His Grace believe that was your function?" He believed a wife's presence could answer questions her judgment had failed to stop. Edmund appeared before the commission on the final day. He did not deny the orders. He defended their purpose. A royal service requires order. Was there disorder outside the chapel? The commissioner asked. No. Were the workers intoxicated? No. Violent? No. Improperly dressed? They wore ordinary clothing. Clean clothing? Yes. Then what disorder did their presence create? Edmund hesitated. Social confusion. The commissioner leaned forward. Inside a chapel, equality before God does not erase civil distinction. No one asked you to surrender your title. The arrangement of the service should reflect responsibility. Whose responsibility? Those who maintain the estate, fund the church, and support the poor. The commissioner opened the contribution ledger. Many people you excluded helped fund the chapel, not at the same level. So, entrance depended upon the size of a donation. No. Upon title? Not formally. Upon employment beneath you? Edmund said nothing. That silence answered more clearly than his previous explanations. The commission's report acknowledged Edmund's genuine charitable work. He had funded clinics, schools, and winter relief. St. Anselm's roof would likely have collapsed without his money, but the report concluded that he had treated generosity as ownership. He had violated the founding covenant, excluded lawful members of the congregation, scheduled a separate service at an hour many workers could not attend, retained empty pews for absent nobles while barring present worshippers, removed community contributors from official recognition, dismissed Hannah for asserting the chapel's legal purpose, used housing and employment as retaliation, misrepresented the service as open to the entire estate, pressured Isobel to lend moral legitimacy to his policy, refused direct instruction from the bishop. Edmund's nomination as Lord High Almoner was cancelled. He resigned as chairman of the Regional Parish Patronage Society. The Valecrest family lost the right to appoint St. Anselm's minister without community and diocesan approval. The chapel passed permanently to an independent governing council. The family entrance was removed. Not sealed, removed. The stone portico remained, but the door behind it was converted into a window. There would be no private route to the altar again. Hannah's cottage and position were restored. Her son returned to work in the estate gardens with compensation for lost wages. Every letter calling Hannah an agitator was withdrawn. Edmund offered her the ceremonial title of Honorary Keeper of the Valecrest Bell. She refused. They met inside the chapel office with the new council present. "I intended the title as acknowledgement," Edmund said. "You still wish to place my service beneath your family name. What do you require? Rules that remain valid after the Duke becomes offended." Hannah proposed. Community-elected chapel wardens, public financial accounts, equal use of the main entrance, service times compatible with working hours, no donor ranking based on wealth, independent protection for chapel employees, worker representation on the governing council, use of the chapel as shelter during storms and extreme cold. The council approved every measure. Hannah remained chapel clerk. She no longer served at Edmund's pleasure. Isobel moved into the house beside the parish clinic. Edmund visited after the inquiry ended. "The family entrance is gone," he said. "Yes." "My appointment is gone." "Yes." "The newspapers call me the Duke who locked servants out of prayer. They are describing what happened." I funded half the charities they praise you for directing. I have never denied your money. He looked at her. Then what do you deny? That payment purchased the right to control everyone standing near your generosity. Edmund sat opposite her. I believed rank created order. You believed order meant everyone approached God after passing you. I did not believe they were unworthy of worship. You believed their worship should remain invisible during the ceremony that advanced your career. He lowered his eyes. Will you return to Valecrest Hall? Not because you lost. What must happen? You must choose equality when no queen is watching, and no bishop can punish you. Edmund's public apology took place at the community entrance. He did not stand beneath the family crest. The workers, clergy, and parish families gathered in the courtyard. Hannah held the chapel keys. Isobel stood among the clinic staff rather than beside her husband. Edmund began. I called exclusion order because order sounded more respectable. He looked towards the people he had barred. I accepted your labor, money, and prayers. Then I decided your presence would diminish the ceremony built from those contributions. He turned to Hannah. I called you a bell ringer because reducing your service made it easier to ignore the covenant you understood better than I did. Then he faced the chapel. I did not protect worship from disorder. I protected my rank from equality. No one applauded. Hannah did not thank him. Isobel did not step forward to complete the scene. Edmund had finally made a statement that did not require another person's approval to appear sincere. 3 years later, St. Anselm's prepared for a winter evening service. Snow had melted into thick mud along the estate roads. A young farm laborer named Daniel Price arrived late, breathing heavily after helping repair a broken fence. His coat was damp. His boots were covered in soil. The new chapel manager blocked the doorway. The carpets have just been cleaned. Daniel stopped. I can stand at the back. You will mark the floor. The congregation began turning towards them. Edmund sat halfway down the central aisle. He now held one ordinary vote on the chapel council and no private pew. The manager looked to him for support. 3 years earlier, Edmund would have directed Daniel to a side entrance or asked him to wait for another service. Instead, he stood and walked to the door. The carpet was purchased to serve the chapel. The manager lowered his voice. His boots will ruin it. Then we will clean it. Edmund opened the door fully. Daniel hesitated. There are no seats. Edmund returned to his pew and removed his prayer book. There is one now. He gave Daniel his place and sat in the final row beside 2 stable boys. No bishop attended. No queen watched. No newspaper recorded the decision. Isobel stood near the entrance and saw everything. After the service, she joined Edmund in the courtyard. The chapel windows glowed behind them. I once believed reverence required visible hierarchy, he said. Reverence requires remembering why the door exists. I built a beautiful chapel. You restored the stone. Edmund looked through the office window. Hannah was reviewing the contribution accounts with 2 elected wardens. They restored its purpose. Isobel studied him. You gave away your seat. It was not mine permanently. 3 years ago, you believed every seat reflected rank. 3 years ago, I believed proximity to the altar proved importance. And now, he glanced towards the muddy footprints across the clean floor. Now I believe the chapel is serving its purpose when someone must clean it after welcoming a person inside. Isobel offered him her hand. I will return to Valecrest Hall. Hope appeared in his face, but he waited. My clinic remains independent. Yes, my name is never used to endorse your decisions without permission. Yes. The chapel remains outside family control. Yes. And there will never again be a private door. Edmund looked at the stonework where the entrance had once stood. No, they walked home together through the same gate used by everyone else. Edmund never received the royal appointment. His name was not carved above the chapel. Hannah kept the keys under authority of the community council. The workers entered through the main door, wearing whatever honest labor had left upon their clothes. The Duke had believed worship became dignified when society's lower ranks remained out of sight. He eventually understood that muddy boots did not profane a sacred building. A locked door did. And St. Anselm's became holy again only when the people who had rebuilt it no longer needed the Duke's permission to pray.